And it's funny though, like it's like right ear pods. Oh my God, are they charged? Is it
All the
is it going to work
things.
today? All the things.
Honestly, there's just so many things to think. And do you know what? I find that when I record, it's like when you get it right every single time when you're prepared, and then when
Yeah.
you're not, and need to get it sorted quickly, that's when things don't work. And you're like, the
Yeah.
one time I just needed it to go right, and it doesn't.
Why must it be this way?
Yeah, literally.
Oh, it's so funny. And how are you? How's your day been?
Good, thank you. Yeah, very good. Very, I feel like everyone's quite busy and full on, so just the same as everyone else. But I actually got to go into work yesterday and see some people, which was so nice. And I'm just missing it like so much. Honestly, I feel that I was really getting to a point where not being around people was getting to me. So I'm very excited to get back into that for sure.
The mental health issue of that is just like, after over 100 days, is so impactful. You don't realize. We had a team catch up yesterday. We've got one of our team returning back to the UK. And so he's flying out, and yesterday was the only day he could do. So we were at a partner's house, and we just had some drinks together, and it was the first time since lockdown that we've all seen each other as a team. It was
insane.
So it's amazing.
Yeah.
So good. But
yeah, so nice to catch up with everyone again. And you forget, like, even if you're an introvert, I feel like you often think you forget how much you need people around you to just exist.
Yeah. It's when the option's taken away.
Yeah. It's when you don't have a choice.
Yeah. And now, of course, like, one of my neighbors, I don't think you can hear it, but has decided to do some lawn mowing of some description, or
classic
hedge cutting of some description. Yeah, I love when that happens.
It's the best. I can't hear it at all, so that's good.
Well, shall we start off with this collateral capture?
Yeah, let's do it.
Please.
Cool. Let me pull up my little... I can go for it whenever?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Kelsey, and I host the OneUp Project podcast. I'm a guest here for the Rosie on Recruitment and Career podcast, where I'll be sharing a little bit about my career journey so far and what I've sort of done with the podcast. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you enjoy it.
I'm sure they will enjoy it, and I'm really looking forward to it too. Amazing. Let's jump on into these questions, because I feel like we'll be able to have quite a few chats, and there's quite a few to get through.
Definitely, let's do it.
So first up, what does recruitment and career mean to you, Sarah?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and I think, like, for me in general, career as a whole has always been a huge part of, like, my life, or something that I really wanted to be important, or something I valued a lot, especially in the corporate world. Like, I started off my working life in a corporate accounting job, and for me that was kind of like the ideal place I could have gone into. I always, was the girl that dreamed of being in meetings all day and got to talk to all these amazing people and have coffee catch-ups and do the whole corporate thing. And so that was what career meant to me then, and it was really important to me. But now it's definitely developed where it's still very important to me, and I'm still a very career focused kind of person, but what that actually means and what I view as important within that has changed so much.
Yeah, that kind of getting into it, stepping into the shoes of something, and then it shifting and changing and growing as you as an individual grow. I think that's probably what a lot of people experience, right?
Yeah, no, totally. I think often especially when you're so young, like, you have this idea of what a career is and what it means and what you think it is. And so you just approach it with the little knowledge you have, and then it changes so much as you get into it. And I think that's the big problem with so many people who are leaving high school, especially, is like, okay, time to make your choice now. And so then you kind of make a choice that is informed on what you already know, but isn't probably the full picture of what actually you want. And that's why it's so hard when you're trying to make those decisions, because you can't know. There's no possible way you can know until you start to learn more about yourself, and then you develop that understanding.
Yeah, yeah. I think you've had, like you said, you had this vision of what you wanted to do first step in this name, or people fall into a career path. That's definitely what happened
Mm,
with my first role. But when you look back at it, so I would have been 19 when I took on my first full-time kind of administrative role. Um, and particularly for young men, their frontal cortex isn't even completely developed yet. So
yeah.
how do you really know what you want to do?
Exactly, exactly. And I feel like there's all this chat about like who are you and what's your purpose and what's your
Yes.
passion. It's like, how is anyone supposed to work that out in general if you haven't experienced as much as you want to experience, especially when you're 18, 19?
Yeah. Which is a really nice segue into the next question, because the OneUp project is for everything that young people weren't taught but should have been, covering great financial literacy, self-development topics. What's top of that list when you hear from your listeners and community, and why?
Yeah, so on the financial literacy side of things, the top of the list is always investing KiwiSaver budgeting, which is kind of the big three, I like to call it, because it just
Yeah.
sort of covers generally most things that you would be interested in when it comes to personal finance, or if you're not from New Zealand, then investing, retirement, and budgeting.
Mm,
And often people are, yeah, just concerned with kind of getting things sorted, and there's always a lot of education that comes in around that people don't initially understand as well. And then when
yeah.
it comes to self-development, I honestly think that the most interaction I have with my audience is when I share my own journey, and kind of am vulnerable and honest in what I've been going through or what I'm keen to do next. And I think hearing someone else's journey with whatever it is they're doing relatable to you is makes it so that you can kind of relate to them and feel like there's someone else going through the same thing that you're going through as well. So it's always the journey side of things that people like to comment on and like to talk about. And my favorite part of having a podcast is talking to people. So when I
Mm,
get, a message from someone about an episode I've released, I'm the first one in there with about 3 to 4 voice messages ready to have a full on conversation, whether or not
yeah.
they're expecting it or not. Like that's what I'll
Yeah.
bring to it. So yeah, that talking about what I'm going through is always a popular one with that side of things.
Did you find that easy at first, that sharing, that type of sharing on a wider scale?
In a way, yes, because I've always sort of been a really honest person when it
Yeah.
comes to my own life. Like, I don't like hiding things. I
Yeah.
think there's so much power and vulnerability, but I wouldn't have been able to articulate that when I first started. I know now that that's
Yeah.
how I feel, but when I started, it was just like, oh, why not be honest about it? And it started with the whole money thing. Like, I was very,
Mm.
I'd share my entire my IR account with like my student loan balance and all of those sort of things, like personal details that probably I shouldn't be sharing, like my tax code and like
People are
all
like,
these,
she's real.
yeah, my IRD number and things like that. And I remember someone messaged me and they're like, I don't know if you should be having like your address and all these personal details on your Instagram. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe not. And so just like learning from that point of view as well. But yeah, I always felt like I wanted to be honest with the money side of things, and then
Yeah.
the personal side of things just came with that as well. And I always find so much value in another person being vulnerable about what it is they've been through, or what they're thinking, regardless of
Mm.
whether or not I agree. Like, it's about taking the little golden nuggets out of their perspective and applying it to your
Yes.
life. And so that's what I want to give to other people. It doesn't mean they have to agree or whatever,
Yeah.
but they need to, relate to some part of it and take what they find valuable from that and put it into their own life.
I think it's a great lesson for just humanity as a whole right now, right? To understand different
Mm,
perspectives also encourages tolerance and connection and understanding. So
completely.
it enables us to work together better. You don't have to always agree, but
Mm.
you can add things at each level.
Mm.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree with you. I think, and that's something I'll talk about a lot later
Yeah.
on, and with some of the questions as well, is just the importance of sharing perspectives.
Yeah. So you released a financial planner and expense tracker, speaking about this whole money journey. And also I know you'll want to help others and make that an easier framework for them. That was in partnership with Live Lively. Why was this important to you? and how can they help, the people that use them?
Yeah, so for me, the podcast was always supposed to achieve one thing mainly, and that was
Yeah.
to bring relatability to really boring topics and to be able to create something fun and interesting out of something that traditionally no one wants to know about in general. I was always kind of that freak that loved when I got paid, like loved manually transferring different amounts into my savings account or into
Right.
a spending account, or like loved the kind of numbers side of that and organizing and all of that kind of thing. But when I figured out that not a lot of other people enjoyed the same thing, I was like, well, how can I make it so they view it how I view it, or how
Mm.
someone who loves numbers would view budgeting or whatever it is. So that's when I decided that I would reach out to Sarah from Live Lively and kind of pitch the idea to her. And like, I love that she was just a small business also,
Yeah.
moving through her career journey, doing her thing. And I felt like we'd make a really good match. And yeah, we've been friends ever since. So it's such a good little friendship to create with that whole thing as well. But yeah, I wanted to create something that brought the elements of the podcast into a physical product and that people could
Right.
use and feel like they were excited to sit down and use it. And so all of the elements that I try to bring to the podcast are within that resource. It's easy to use. It looks really pretty. It's completely all done for you. You just need to put in your own personal situation and make it relevant to you. And so those being the main things were the elements or parts of the financial planner that I think needed to be in the wider financial world for most people. Like those sort of elements needed to be brought into other resources as well. And so, yeah, that's just what I wanted to do with it. And I feel like we achieved a really cool result.
Yeah, no, I mean, very pretty.
Thank you. That's the most important thing. It's like new activewear, like you're not motivated to work out if you don't have new activewear. So same with budgeting.
Exactly that. I am the polar 180 of you. I am not at all. I'm terrible with that whole money situation, and just anything that can help to motivate and automate and simplify has got to be a great thing. So what a great place to be able to start and move it into something tangible for your listeners.
Yeah, definitely. I think like it was fun because the whole thing was really just a fun project, and I think it's fun to be the person who needs the resource also creating the resource, because I'm really like in the mind of the person who would be using it because it's me. So that's the fun part of it as well.
How cool. We touched on this a bit earlier. You did a short stint at PwC when you started. That's the corporate name. And highly recognized. It is one of those brands that a number of graduates would look at and be, oh my God, yes. I've landed, I've gotten here.
Yeah.
How did you decide it wasn't for you?
Yeah, I think this is such a good question because I reflect on it really a lot, actually.
Yeah.
And that's because sometimes I think, oh, was I too arrogant thinking, I'm just going to leave after 9 months because this isn't for me? Should I have kind of given it more of a shot? But even if those thoughts come up in my mind, I always end them with thinking, no, you knew it was right for you, because it came down to a gut feeling for me. And I think that's just another lesson from all of this for me, was trusting your gut so much more. Usually it's always right. It always knows. You always know deep down what you truly want and what you truly feel is right. And in that situation, that was just the case. And there are a few like things around that role that kind of pushed me out, in the sense that I wasn't doing work that was fulfilling, or I felt like the culture really didn't match what I believed. And I feel now so lucky that I had that kind of traditional corporate experience, because relating it to any other job now, I just have so much contrast, which I like love having that. But yeah, I think it just came down to doing a lot of work on myself meant that I was able to make decisions up until that point that aligned so much with me, and my job and my work just was one of those decisions that just fully didn't align with who I was and what I wanted to do. As simply as just not enjoying accounting, like knowing that that wasn't the job that suited me and my personality. And knowing those things and knowing more about myself makes decisions easier. And so I knew it was right. And then I just eventually made that decision. But like explaining it now seems so easy and simple, but at the time it really wasn't like that. But I guess with
There's
hindsight,
so much. Yeah.
With hindsight, you can always sort of explain something like, oh, it was this, and I was gone. But at the time, I was making like giant pros and cons lists. I had, people saying that I was making the wrong decision and other people saying, no, you should do what you feel is right. So it was like balancing all of those kind of influences on it as well.
Yeah. And I think an important thing to remember that I speak to a lot of mentees about is there's actually no wrong choice. You're going to just have to make a choice and then learn the life experience from where that path takes you, right?
Exactly.
And I think if you, as you were saying, you couldn't see yourself being an accountant. So if you were in that office and you look at the progression of where that career path would have taken you within that office environment, that's the only place you were heading, really, wasn't it?
Totally. And I think it's so easy, like in those environments when the path is so clearly laid out for you. You start as a grad and you work your way all the way up to partner. It's fully laid out for you, and you feel like everyone else around you is kind of following that path. So you not following that path seems so wrong, and you feel,
and it's highly competitive there too.
Very competitive, and like a lot of guilt surrounded that decision for me. Like I definitely felt a lot of guilt because one, it's like I've been given this amazing opportunity that so many other people would, like you were saying, kill for. I had so many people tell me, oh my God, that what an amazing opportunity. You're so, lucky to have gotten that, and you should definitely keep going with it. And wow, so many grads would love to be in your position. And so I felt so bad that I didn't want it. But then at the same time, that was almost the thing that got me to resign, was that, well, there's no point in me taking this opportunity from someone else who would actually love to be here. And that's what sort of the image I kept in my mind was like another person coming in and just like loving this environment. And I thought, I need to do this for that person and give that person the opportunity to slot in, regardless of the fact that I don't know where I'm going next. I want to do in my head, trying to justify like the good thing and give this person the opportunity to come through and fulfill that role that I don't feel like I'm right for.
I think that's such an important lesson that people don't take on board enough. So many people, as we know, study after study, there's a huge percentage of people that are unhappy in their current work environments and doing the roles that they do. And I think it's a lot of fear. Obviously, there is also just the cost of living, responsibilities as humans that put pressures on that. But then they don't create space and time to explore what those other opportunities are that could make them more fulfilled. So there's got to be that vein between fulfillment and lifestyle and responsibilities. But too many just decide it would be too hard and continue on. And then if something does happen in an environment, they feel very stuck because they've never really taken that time. So it sounds like already in your short time, you had created space.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Like I feel I saw so many people around me where it's like a snowball effect, right? Because the longer you're kind of in that environment, the more of a lifestyle you build around that environment, and the harder it is to leave. And the more you feel like you're trapped there. And so I could kind of see people a few years ahead of me already feeling like that. And I thought, I really can't be one of those people.
You are my cautionary tale.
Yeah, exactly. I knew that I would also be that kind of person where I would tell myself, you've built up this kind of reputation here, this career here, now you can't stop. But knowing deep down it's not right for you. And that's such a hard position to be in. So I think even though it was hard for me to leave, it is so much easier to do it earlier on than have waited a couple of years and have spent that time building up a career in a place that I didn't really want to be in anyway.
Yeah. So I guess on that point, what tips do you have for someone who is struggling to discover what they really want to do as a role or career?
Yeah, I love talking about this because I think it's just so common as well. And there's two general rules that I always say for anything in life, for self-development. And these two things are two tips, I suppose, that I've picked up as a pattern from my podcast guests. I've interviewed a lot of what generally society would call successful people and established in their careers and have been through it and have done that and have found what they now enjoy. And the patterns I've picked up from them is two things. One, be curious, and two, take risks. They always repeat it, especially the curiosity thing. Like, it's something I always hear them say is just continue to be curious, continue to learn more, not only about yourself, but other people as well. And that's where, you know, learning more about other people's perspectives is so important, because it definitely shapes how you think. And that doesn't mean that you take someone else's perspective and make that your own. That means you take other things to justify a perspective you already have, or to change one you already have, and let that shape you. And like, that diversity and perspectives is so important for your own personal growth. And so being curious about all of those things is so important. And then having, I guess, the courage to take risks is a massive part of that as well. I mean, leaving my corporate job was a risk, and one that I knew I needed to take in order to move forward, even though it felt like a step back. And so I think those two things really sum up what people should focus on when they're not sure, is just continue to be curious about all the different things you could do. Don't put pressure on yourself to really love something if you're being told it's the right thing. Just do what feels right and continue to seek out different things and learn more about yourself. And then when it feels right, take the risk to either leave or to do something.
Yeah. Because I really think that being curious and open to open to understood risk is absolutely the nemesis of fear. And it's fear that holds so many people back in a current circumstance. So, and I would agree, basically every podcast guest and hiring manager I've spoken with is around looking for people who have that natural curiosity and will ask the what and the why. So I think that's a fantastic piece of advice. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you're a podcaster,
correct,
marketing coordinator, writing freelancer. Tell us more about all that you're doing and how you switch between different tasks that you juggle.
Yeah, so I guess a lot of people always ask me, like, you have a lot on the go, and so how do you manage it? I feel like everyone has a lot on the go, so I feel like that's just a default, you know, like everyone has things on the go. And for me, doing all of these things, I only do it because I enjoy it. In the sense that I only put more pressure on myself to do something else because I actually enjoy it. Like, if I didn't enjoy the podcast, I would not be doing it every day outside of work and every weekend.
Believe me, yes.
Believe me, I would not be.
We had this discussion in our little intro. Well.
I would not be editing podcast episodes on a Sunday night, sometimes hungover, like hating my life. So
why do I do this again?
Like, honestly, sometimes I question, like, I'd just be sitting there editing or
am I?
Creating a post, and I'm just, why am I doing this? But then that exact question is exactly what brings you back to
absolutely
to doing it, is why am I doing this? Oh, I know why, because I'm trying to help people, or I'm trying to do something that contributes to another person's life. And so that's
absolutely
why I'm doing it. And coming back to that is what helps me to manage it, because I know why I'm doing it. I'm so sure of that. And even though the return in a monetary sense is never guaranteed or even there at all, it's not about that. And so what I get back from it is fulfillment. I get so much fulfillment from the podcast in ways that my audience would just never understand, like emotional fulfillment. And it's just so much. Like, I honestly even get emotional, like, when I think about it, which is so ridiculous. Like, it seems crazy. No, it's
absolutely insane.
It's
the appropriate response. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, everyone cries when they have a podcast. It's fine.
Totally.
But I think it's because, you know, you build this community with people who you don't even know, and you have these people who are sending you vulnerable messages that not even your closest friends or family have shared with you, things like that before, or whatever. You know, you're talking to all of these people and you're developing all of these relationships, and you're like, this is why I'm doing it. And that's what helps me to manage all of it. Um, yeah, like I feel at the moment I was talking to, who was I talking? No, it was the it was the podcast audience on Instagram, and I was asking them like, I'm really struggling to balance everything at the moment, and I don't know if that's a combination of lockdown and not having a routine or what that is, but I'm really struggling to balance everything, and was just asking them for tips. And I am not the person that has all of those kind of tips and hacks and strategies around how to be productive. It's, for me, it always comes back to why I'm doing something, and that feeling is the thing that keeps me organized, that keeps me doing it, structured, and building it into my routine and building it into my day is the reason why I'm doing it.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I mean, obviously, I associate so much with the podcasting pieces and why we do this and what we're driven by, and the openness of people that share with us and building this community. But I think anyone else who doesn't have a podcast can still take away those points around how they're driven by their why and who is it that they're helping and why do they want to help them? Because I think the deepest whys do come from that connection, right, of humanity.
Totally. Yeah. And when I think about it in a career sense as well, I've bounced back and forth with this question for so long, and I still don't think I know the answer, but I would always tell people, I want to be passionate about what I'm doing for work. I want to care about what I'm doing in my job. And I've always felt like that. And I remember someone said to me, Sarah, stop putting so much pressure on yourself. You don't have to be passionate about your job. And at first I was like, yeah, I agree with that. And now I'm like, I just don't know, because I feel like for me, I do have to feel passionate about my job. Like for me, that is something I need. And for other people, it's not. It's a means to do something else. And I think that's why it's so important to understand what you want out of life and what you value, because then you can make that decision for yourself, and you can decide what pressure you want to put on yourself in different areas of your life in order to get a certain result. And that was like another thing, I guess, that helped me to leave that corporate job, was that I knew having a career that I cared about and that also contributed fulfillment to my life, like the podcast did, was important to me, and I wanted to find that somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. So and prioritizing your time around that, right? We all have finite amounts of time. So I love what you're saying about that, prioritizing it, because you know what helps to fill up your cup while you're also being productive and helping a whole audience to achieve their goals in ways that you won't even always know.
Totally.
But another important takeaway, I think, from that sharing was around not always having the answers. And that's a misconception I have a lot of people come to me with. So, you've got the silver bullet for this one thing. Well, no.
No. Actually, I have no idea.
No idea what that is. But it's context, it's personalities, there's so many different factors that happen. And you're here being able to share and start a conversation that can then take people into other greater places.
For sure. Facilitate those conversations and those perspectives. And, I always say to people as well, like the people I bring on the podcast, I don't agree with everything they say. Like I don't bring people on the podcast to agree with what they're saying and for that to just be in our big bubble of we all think the same way. Like the point is to, like you're saying, have those other people that shape what you want to do and who you are.
Yeah, amplify that. Although on answers, do you have a personal hack that helps you switch between that juggle and your focus to improve productivity?
Yeah, so
where's your silver bullet now?
Yeah, so even though there's no silver bullet, what is yours?
Yeah, totally.
I feel I'm definitely the worst person to ask this right now because I've been struggling, but I feel that having a passion project or a hobby, whether that's a podcast or whether that's surfing, or whether that's skateboarding, or whatever it is you do, something that's really good about having something like that is you can relate elements of that hobby to what you do in your everyday. And so for me with the podcast, what I try to do with the podcast is make boring things relatable. I try and make something that traditionally people don't want to do exciting. So I try to do that in my own life too, when I'm organizing things I don't want to do or work that is admin, or trying to prioritize everything and focus on the right things and organize 1,000,001 tasks. I'm like, okay, well, how is this relatable to the bigger picture of why I'm doing something or what I'm trying to do, and then prioritize things based on that. And so I always think if certain people are listening to this podcast, they'll laugh because I've recently become so obsessed with Simon Sinek, and reading his book Start With Why. Like I just, I've taken it into pretty much every aspect of my life, and I feel, I don't know if it's a bit too far or what, but just starting with why with everything now is my go-to. Like, why am I doing something? Why is this important? And that's my prioritization metric for life.
Oh, so, well, I mean, it's a great measure to be able to work with, right? And I think it also, what I love about Simon's work is it really allows us to be the unique individuals we are, and it gives us some framework to articulate that in ways that potentially we've never dug deep enough into ourselves to get a little bit more of a better operating system for ourselves.
Definitely. Like I think one thing that's always annoyed me about the personal finance industry, but that I've now come to learn is probably the most key part of it all, is how people always say, well, we can't give advice because it's going to depend on your personal situation. I'm just like, oh, that doesn't show accessibility to information at all, because people always have to work out their own personal situation, and it creates another barrier. But I've kind of shifted that mindset now where I'm like, well, actually, no, understanding your personal situation is the key of anything to understanding how you can apply anything to your life. And so once you have a good understanding of what you want, both financially, emotionally, within your career, whatever it is, every other decision, every other like finding past that point becomes so much easier to access.
Yeah, you've got a key to unlock the rest that you can build and develop on. I love that. So your podcast, it's well known and you're building a fantastic community. What I want to know is what's something people don't know about you or may misunderstand about you.
Yeah, I got really stumped on this one because I was like, oh, what?
Because you are so open. This is what Yeah,
and I'm so happy to be open with any question anyone has. But I think, and this relates to what we were just talking about, is that I think people often think I have it all worked out because
sussed.
I've sussed it. You know, I've started a podcast on money and self-development. What else do you need? Like, I know how much I'm going to retire with. I know my budget and savings strategies. I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. Yes, it could potentially look like that, but also
I'm human.
It's nothing like that at all. And there's so many parts of my life that I share and I'm vulnerable about. And I think people think because I've shared it and I've articulated it and I've kind of decided on some next steps, it means I've got it sorted. But you know, the emotions that are within my head that you don't see because I'm talking just normally about it like this is that I am scared, I am unsure, I am nervous, I am like all of these sorts of things about life. And I think people can sometimes forget that because it seems like I know what I'm doing when I have no idea. And you know, other people, it depends how you look at it. You could look at it like, oh, this girl's left her corporate job and, you know, then she's found something that she really enjoys and started this podcast and is meeting all these amazing people. But you could also describe it as this person left in a really amazing opportunity that they were, you know, given to be unemployed for 4 months and do nothing except sort of try and figure out what they wanted, to then jump into a job that they're now having to start from scratch again. And then they also have no idea what the role progression is going to look like over the next year. So you could also describe it like that, where it's kind of like a mess. But that's not how I tend to describe it because that's not how I see it either. And I think it's all like a big perspective kind of thing. But I think ultimately people can misunderstand that I am also just another 23-year-old girl trying to work out what I want to do.
Yeah. And you're right, it's that lens, right? And
Mm.
I think as long as you have this solid standing in your own why and what it looks like for you today, I think you've just got this amazing foundation for wherever it is you want to head. And you've shown so much courage already of following your gut, of, taking those risky steps, of being really curious, all of the great things that will allow you to progress and accelerate, Sarah. Like it's so great to watch.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I do appreciate it. I think I just have a huge obsession with figuring out more about myself and what I think and what my view of the world and view of life is. And so I'm constantly learning things and then realizing I disagree with how I thought about that a month ago.
Yeah.
And that's been kind of happening. Yeah, exactly. That's totally okay. And I'm the biggest fan of challenging every single thought I have and potentially changing that or potentially reinforcing that original thought. Like, I'm going back on things all the time. And I love that though. I find that so exciting because it just means, as humans, we're not stuck in one kind of way of thinking or way of life. Like we can be anything and do anything we want at any given time, and that can change at any given time.
Yeah, that's a fantastic possibility, isn't it?
It's exciting.
So into the world views of today, how has COVID changed your business and career plans? And what do you think's next for you?
Yeah, well, I guess it's an interesting one with COVID because it had I've been very fortunate in the sense that it hasn't really affected my actual career too much because I left PwC at the end of last year, and then I did spend 4 months kind of like unemployed / freelance work, and then I just jumped into a new role, and it's kind of been the same regardless apart from working from home and all of that kind of thing. So I've been able to kind of keep going and progressing, and I haven't necessarily been affected that much. And I think our work or the job I moved into, what we do is positively affected by COVID in the sense that so we build software for health and fitness influencers. So lots of people want at home and programs and gym programs going into a lockdown. They want to keep healthy, and so that means we only get busier. And so it's just been even ramping up even more, which has been exciting. So I guess from here, it's all about continuing to grow and continuing to build on what I've already got going and learning, and very blessed to have some incredible mentors in my life. So keeping them close to kind of help me guide me through that journey as well. And like I said, like I still have no idea what I'm doing. Very much
you're 23.
The kind of person who
fine.
Yeah. And totally I feel
fine.
like I try to have intentions, but I never try to put myself in a box of like where I'm heading. I just have the intentions of what I want to carry through the next part of the journey, but not necessarily where exactly I'm going, which causes just as much fear as it does excitement, but it's also how I like to live.
Yeah, we're all built differently, right? And I think understanding that that's a process that works for you will enable you to be open to so many opportunities. So what does being whole human, imperfect, and real mean to you?
I love this. I've said this about almost every question you've asked, but I love this question because it's just so relevant to everything I enjoy talking about. So for me, it means being curious about every part of yourself and not afraid to explore your own vulnerability. Oh my God, can I even talk? Own vulnerability. Far out. You wouldn't think I was a podcaster, would you? Sometimes it's like, geez, sort it out.
Work.
Yeah, I reckon. So yeah, I feel something so many of us struggle to show as our vulnerability to others, but something that's also not often spoken about is how hard it can be to dive into our own vulnerability as people and be honest with ourselves. And so
that can really hurt.
Yeah, it can. And so many of us don't want to do that, understandably, for whatever, you've been through or going through in your life.
Hmm.
But I think to be able to do that and have the courage to explore yourself and your own thoughts and be in the depths of your own mind, wherever that might take you, uh, is something that makes us human. And all of those things, those fears that you don't want to dive into, that's what makes our journey and our perspective so authentic and genuine and unique. And
Yeah.
that's the stuff I love getting into with other people and guests, because that's
Yeah.
where you really start to connect on a deeper level and really understand that we're all the same when it comes down to it, in the sense that
Yeah.
so many of us have similar fears, similar goals, regardless of who you are, where you came from, and regardless of age and that sort of stuff as well, that so
Hmm.
often people think determines what you think or feel. And so, yeah, I think a huge part of being whole human is diving into your own vulnerability and being curious about every part of yourself.
Yeah. It's such a great exposure. I know you feel this way with guests as well, that their journey sharing sometimes fulfills that piece of people that, that they want to understand the what ifs and behind the shiny title and,
Yeah,
the accolades that are advertised everywhere about what someone's done. But so rare to see, the challenge that came with that, the uncertainty, the fear, that growth. So absolutely, that's what these podcasts are about, I think. And that's one of the reasons I love the work that you do and the types of conversations you have, because I feel very connected to them as well.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, likewise for sure. Yeah, I think that diving into different perspectives is allows you to pick up different patterns of the way people do things as well. That's just
Mm,
something I've noticed through podcasting, is that so many of the guests I have on say the same things. The journey's
yeah,
different, the experience is different, but the learning
the
and
theme. Yeah.
the theme that is taken out of it is the exact same. And it can be applied to so many different areas of a person's life as well, which so for me, I find it really important to try and help people unlock those little things where they can
Mm,
relate to someone who they once would never think they could relate to, and try to understand that the journeys aren't actually that different when we're talking about lessons learnt.
yeah. I missed a question. I'm going to go back because I want to ask it.
All right, let's do it.
What can businesses and hiring managers do to better support their younger, new to work, or intermediate team members? What do you think from your perspective?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, having more empathy for the change that a person is going through when they're first starting out, but also just generally, um,
Mm,
like being empathetic to the fact that they may not have any idea what they're doing at that workplace. And they might not even know if they enjoy what they're doing. And the best thing that you could do to support them is to actually just show you care about their development as a human, regardless of what the company's going to get out of it or what the return on that will be for, yeah, for the managers, for the company, whatever it is. To actually show you care about the development of them as a person, I think will really have a huge impact on them, and will
mm,
create long lasting relationships beyond workplaces, which could often benefit someone in the long term anyway. And so, yeah, I just think there's so much power in having more empathy.
I couldn't agree more. I'm a very empathetic human, and that's been my
Yes,
leadership style.
definitely.
So
Definitely. Seems like you
I
are.
agree with that completely. Um, but I also see in results where they talk about organizations with empathetic leaders and that genuinely put their people first, don't just have it written up on the wall or in their vision statement, but
Mm,
through the actions of how they develop and the communication style they have and the transparency of so many different items that are important, financial, team collaboration. Those
mm.
businesses are far more successful than organizations that are looking for that immediate return for that $1 they spend on an employee. So to have leaders that can stand up and really champion their teams and understand who they are as unique humans will also get the best out of them
Mm,
for the
completely.
business.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. I think it's something I've been learning so much more about this year because a lot of my work has to do with kind of overall vision and the why, which has been so much fun for me. But I've really learnt how important it is to tie everything you do back into that vision and into that why, and the culture is built through doing that, because then you build trust with the people who are within that culture and who are living those values and all those sorts of things. And again, relating back to the theme of the podcast, like making boring topics relatable, like it's the same with values and vision and culture. It has to be relatable to those people. It can't just be something you say we do. So yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. And is there anything else you'd like to share or last words for this episode? Because you're also coming back for the next episode. But any last words for this episode?
Yeah, I'd like to say, if there's one thing that having a podcast has taught me, and this isn't necessarily a lesson just from having a podcast, but it's a lesson anyone could learn if they've listened to all of my podcasts, and that would be that people are just the key to everything. And I feel that it's very cheesy, and it's when you know, and when you don't quite understand, you'll think I'm just being really cliche. But people, their perspectives, their experiences, what you can learn from someone else is just the key to your own development and to your understanding of the world and all of those sorts of things. I often relate it back to, how there's that stereotype of people who they go on a big OE or big traveling journey and they come back and they're like, oh my God, I'm a changed person. Like, I've just been around the world and I've experienced all these cultures and like, wow, the diversity, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah. But that is the same thing when you are experiencing and immersing yourself in the perspectives of a wide range of people. You get that same feeling as you would when you've done a massive OE or you've traveled and you've experienced all these sorts of things.
Absolutely.
And so as someone who, well, as all of us who haven't been able to travel and to do that and gain those like worldly experiences, immersing yourself into the perspectives of other people from all different parts of the world, all different backgrounds, is going to help you to have that kind of understanding as well, and feel like you can learn more about yourself. And it's just done so much for me. And so I really encourage other people to seek out the perspectives of others and find a relatable voice that's going to actually make it interesting for you.
Yeah, we're so lucky now in this day and age where we have that type of accessibility too. So, take those opportunities and dive a little deeper.
Definitely.
Thank you for your time for this episode.
Thank you. I really appreciate
it. Kat.